Hello everybody and welcome back to another DLC Buyer's Guide overview. I'm Carix, and let's take a look at Cities Skylines DLC number 3, Natural Disasters. Now, I like to design cities that are aesthetically pleasing, and I just like having fun and chilling out. So I don't actually use much of the disasters, but natural disasters comes with a bunch of actual things and buildings and assets and stuff that look pretty cool. So let's take a look at everything you get and kind of look at what comes in this DLC. So everything here in this little DLC town, as we're calling it, is what you get in terms of the ploppable buildings and sort of the assets that you get for natural disasters. So you get some new unique buildings. We get the Meteorite Park, sort of a little disaster memorial. I mean, this looks fantastic. I think this looks actually pretty fantastic. This is some sort of weird, like, helicopter park. It's okay. It doesn't look like a unique building. It just looks kind of unique and interesting. This is another sort of kind of memorial looking structure as well. This one looks very interesting. I mean, that's kind of what I feel like you have to say about these parks. Here's the Sphinx. This one has to do with doing the scenarios. So I think it's like the Sphinx of Scenarios or something like that. It has some goofy name, and you unlock it by completing a lot of the scenarios. But it's just an interesting, you could call it like a little tourist area. I'm sure you could find uses to make this look interesting. It could be the entrance, like you could trick the game into thinking it's like, near the entrance. You can make it look like the entrance of a park, or like a Park Life Park or something. I don't use this building very often, but there you go. And then here's just sort of the Rainbow Park, I guess. I don't know what to say. These are the 6 unique buildings you get. Some of them are pretty cool. Some of them are okay, and some of them you might like if if they fit a particular need, right? It's just more aesthetics, more unique things to put in our city to give it more flavor and variety, which is great. This is not the most impressive looking monument I've ever seen in my life. This is the monument. Every DLC from here on out is going to give us a monument. And this is the monument that we get. This is the Doomsday Vault. So essentially, people can retreat to this area, and this can hold, because it's a monument, this one of course is the most powerful shelter. This can hold a ton of food, water. In fact, I don't even know if it needs shipments of those things or if it's just ready to go from day one. But basically, when there's a sort of a disaster warning, people can evacuate certain areas where the disaster is going to strike, and they can go to this Doomsday Vault and survive. Basically what that's all about. So it looks it fits the part, but it doesn't look particularly incredible for a monument. Some other ploppables that we have that are a little bit more, useful. We have the Firewatch Tower, which is actually really, really cool. Because this doesn't need to be connected to roads or anything like that. It makes people happy. It seems to increase land value and make people happy, but it also reduces fire hazard risk. This is actually really neat. I love using this, and you can find so many awesome aesthetic places to put that. And you don't, again, the fact that you don't need to put it on a road or anything, it doesn't need power or water or anything. It's just amazing. We do have helicopter services now. We have air firefighters, like helicopter, fire department, air, what am I trying to say here? Helicopters that go fight fires, sort of for fighting forest fires, but they'll work in the city just fine too. We have police choppers. Go and service buildings just like police cars, but these are choppers. And we also have the ambulance, the airlift for medical situations that happen, far out in the wilderness or something. And these are actually really cool because you can create more isolated areas, because these areas can now service those buildings, right? They can actually fly out to those areas and service those areas that are more, quote, quote, off the grid. And that's kind of cool. The problem is these helicopters are incredibly slow and incredibly ineffective. I mean, I'm sure the police helicopter and the ambulance choppers work just fine. The firefighting ones, if you have a raging forest fire, these things are going to do nothing. Each one of these can service 3 helicopters, and that's its problem, because especially the forest fighting helicopters, they have to go and fill up with water, then go over, then they put out a couple trees, but by the time they put out a couple trees, it's already spread to 50 more. It's these things are a little bit, unfortunately, suboptimal, I think. We have these radio masts, which look kind of cool. I mean, aesthetically, you could put these in some really neat places, you know what I mean? These basically are part of the sort of alert system, right? So if there's going to be a disaster, these are the towers that you can build throughout your city to give people notice for the message to get out, right? The radio message to get out that there's going to be an incoming disaster in a certain area, and people then are being, you know, can get emergency messages over the radio. If you have these throughout your city, they have a huge radius, so you don't have to build that many of them. And like the Firewatch Tower, they do not need to be near roads or connected to water, which is really nice. We have some little earthquake sensor boxes here. Some nice little thematic things. I mean, you put these around your city, and then these are areas that will predict and detect potential earthquakes and other sort of disruptances, like maybe even the sinkholes, earthquakes, and the collapses and stuff like that. So these are going to help give you a warning. Like, so there's sort of like, there's kind of, I guess, two kinds of buildings. There's the buildings that deal with the disaster itself. We have these extra air vehicles to deal with the disaster. We have the shelters to house the people so that they survive and they don't die in the disaster at home, you know what I mean? And then we also have the buildings, the ploppables that help us predict and detect when a disaster is going to happen, not necessarily where it's going to happen. So we have those little earthquake boxes there. This is the actual main building. This is the disaster response unit. These will send out helicopters as well, choppers and vehicles as well, different areas, and those will essentially go through the rubble, what's left, and find survivors and just make... Basically, when a building gets destroyed by a disaster, it becomes rubble. When these disaster units go in there, they can scope it out and they can clear it out, and then you can rebuild. You need these disaster units to essentially respond first, and then you're able to rebuild those buildings that have been destroyed. They go and look for the survivors and such. A couple more little doodads here. We have a little weather tower, so for protecting storms and tornadoes and things like that. We have a radar dish. This is for detecting meteors that are about to strike our city. This is actually, I mean, you can imagine how cool of an asset this is. I mean, you could stick this anywhere. You could call it, you could do anything with this, call it anything you want, you know what I mean? So a lot of these assets are actually kind of cool, but again, when I zoom out, there's not a lot here. I mean, this is, compared to what we saw in, you know, even Snowfall, and definitely in After Dark, I mean, this is nothing. This is literally nothing, you know? So we do get flood fans. These go around and suck up water during a flood, like a tsunami. So they'll actually go and actually like grab excess water and suck them up, and then, you know, get rid of the excess water. We have reserve tanks, extra water in case there's a disaster or whatever, and then we can start using from the supply, from the reserves. And we also have these are actually kind of cool. So this is a lake that I created using the terraforming in the game. This is all vanilla, created all vanilla tools. These little outflows actually let you create bodies of water now in the quote quote in the game without mods. Now there's mods that let you do this pretty easily, but this is kind of neat that they added something like this. So this lets you sort of flow out excess water and create lakes and rivers and things, which is kind of neat. So these are all the ploppables that you get in natural disasters. Now let's take a pause here and let's switch over to looking at the policies. Some of the new policies that you get helicopter priority. If you set a district, if you create a district and you call it helicopter priority, that means that the helicopters will service that before ground vehicles. So ground vehicles will not waste their time working on that. And you'll see a bunch of helicopters going out to that area whenever there's an issue, which is kind of good for certain situations. It also means that your helicopters are going to be more attentive to those locations that you want the helicopters to go to. VIP area basically just means that you can mark certain locations, certain neighborhoods for the Sims that live in those neighborhoods to be prioritized when going to shelters. So make those people essentially VIPs. Faster recovery means that the response unit doesn't actually look for survivors. They just go in and sort of clear the area, and then you can rebuild immediately without recovering any surviving Sims. So kind of grim, but at the same time, you know, like Sims are just kind of a dime a dozen. No rebuilding. This essentially means if there is a disaster somewhere, it won't rebuild. Things won't rebuild automatically. You can actually set it to make it look like it's sort of like a ruined, disaster-ridden area. You can just kind of have it immortalized, I guess. which is actually kind of cool. And then lightning rods. And it looks like this is on the roof so that likelihood of them catching fire during the thunderstorm is reduced. So again, it's a rather expensive policy just for, you know, reducing the chance at fire during a lightning storm. But there you go. Enact lightning rods in certain areas. Those are the policies. You get about 12 achievements with natural disasters, which is basically experience, like literally you get an achievement just for experiencing a tornado, experiencing a tsunami, you know what I mean? So just experiencing the different disasters. And you also, the other thing that you get is you get some scenarios. We can actually take a look at those in a second in the menu, and I can show you kind of the scenarios. You get 5 of those, then you get some maps, and we'll go check out the maps as well. We'll cut this, go check out the maps. But last thing you get is you actually do get to, so we can go to the main menu here, right? I'm going to cut the music there. And we can actually, you know, I have disasters turned off right now. Use random disasters that's turned off. You can turn this on and adjust the frequency as much as you want. I think it defaults pretty low, so this is quite a lot of disasters up here. I don't think I'm going to go through and activate all the disasters, but this is kind of what you do. You go to the Terraform tool, the Landscaping and Disasters tab, and you go to this tab right here that says Disasters. And now we have the different disasters. So this is essentially what you get the DLC for. I use it because I like these assets. I like mixing these in for thematic reasons, for themed building. But some people actually like using the disasters to blow up their city when they're done with it or whatever. So we can actually, you know, you can select a tornado, tell it where you want it to kind of strike through, and then you can adjust the sort of the magnitude, right? The severity from 0 to 10. So there's tornadoes, there's earthquakes, there's sinkholes. There's thunderstorms, fire, collapse. So forest fires are actually separate from building fires, which is kind of interesting. So you have a little bit more control there. A forest fire is going to be like a giant raging fire, where a building fire is just going to be like a specific building in the area that catches fire, and that can spread if it doesn't get stopped. Tsunamis, which are pretty intense. I don't know if we get much of a tsunami on this map. And then meteor strikes. Of course, tsunamis and meteor strikes, I think, are the all-stars of the disasters here, right? You know, big giant meteors striking, and you can see a picture of it there, just complete devastation. And then the tsunamis can be pretty hilarious as well. And you can create your own, I mean, heck, we've been creating our own floods in this game since the game came out, right? You know, dams that went wrong, or doing terraforming out here, and this sort of causes the water to upheave itself. We've been flooding our cities since, you know, since 2015, but here you go. You can actually do it now with the tsunami feature. Are we going to be able to see the sinkhole or not? See, this is one of the things I really don't like about the implementation of this, is that the sinkhole, it's about to happen. It doesn't happen when you click it. This isn't SimCity where you're hitting all the buttons and everything's just flying in, and, you know, we're waiting. It's just like, okay, what's the big deal? Incoming sinkhole. And I think that's partly because, here it is, it focuses on the disaster when it happens. I don't even know if this is going to destroy anything. That was a 4.6 sinkhole. That did nothing. Obviously a 10.0 would have done more maybe, but there you go. That's why I'm not so hoorah about the disasters here, guys. So let's cut it here, and then we'll go check out the maps. I'll do a full tour of all the maps, a really quick overview of what all the maps look like. There's 3 new maps, and then we can take a look at the scenarios. Hello everybody, and welcome back. We are going to, if we click new game, let's check out the scenarios. So if we go to the scenarios tab, we can now see the scenarios that come with natural disasters. These might be things that might be fun for you. I don't particularly get too excited about stuff like this, but you know, tornado country. Can you create a population of over 260,000? Holy cow. So this is, have more than 1 million. Well, that wouldn't be too hard, would it? Tornado country. So basically create a massive city, which is going to take you hours and hours and hours. And apparently you're going to be getting hit by tornadoes. Here's floodland. So these are just basically island hopping. I mean, these are areas that are essentially designed to, you know, these are scenarios to win, and they have conditions for winning. 500,000 people transported using public transportation. Interesting. So, and I'm sure that every single one of these, because it's natural disasters, you're just going to be getting completely hammered by the you know, floods or tornadoes or whatever. Actually, this one looks like it might just be kind of like a just play the game, just build a lot of public transportation. So there's some scenarios that you can do, and you start with a city. it gives you some sort of city that you need to improve from and build from and stuff like that. So, I actually like doing these in SimCity, actually, to be honest. I've just never really thought to do them in City Skylines. But those are the 5 scenarios you get. And now we're back with the map tour. So this is Prussian Peaks, and this is one of the 3 maps that comes with natural disasters. Let's take a look at the maps before we wrap this sort of buyer's guide up. This one's actually really, really cool looking. I've not built on this one yet, but I'm kind of excited to try. I've just kind of been like kind of hilled out for a while. This one is just like, I feel like you could build some really creative, some really fun stuff on this one because of the terrain. The terrain is going to challenge you. It's going to force you to build a more creative city. We can kind of do a little bit here. Looks like you start literally right in the middle. There's this one freeway system that just sort of takes up like a small section of the map. A lot of the map is not. Oh no, actually, wow, there's a disconnected freeway over here, actually. Very interesting. You can eventually connect into this one, it looks like. I don't think there's any rail on this map. In fact, I'm not exactly sure how you're going to get cargo around. Unless, yeah. Very interesting map. Very interesting map. It'd be a challenge to build on here, but I think your city would look pretty spectacular. So this is the Prussian Peaks. And this is map number 2 for natural disasters, the Dust Bowl. And you start off here. You have a nice little river, but it's kind of a little bit almost too even. In fact, what's going on with this river here? Oh, it's flowing this direction, huh? Looks like it's being a little bit of janky here. Not sure what's going on with this map actually, in terms of that water physics. Yeah, this is it. Looks like you got a big body of water out here in this corner, big body of water out here. You do not have rails on this one, so I did look at that. There's no rails on this one. That, however, does have ship access. Whereas Prussian Peaks actually did have rail. It did have rail. I just didn't find it. That was a bit of a misspeak there. Some hills in some of these areas, but for the most part, this is looking rather flat. Lots of trees. I mean, if we zoom in, we can see there is some elevation changes, but nothing dramatic. Kind of a slow, easy adjustment of elevation over time. This actually looks like kind of a nice little area that you could build on this little plateau up here. For the most part, this looks pretty bog standard. The Dust Bowl. The 3rd and final map for natural disasters is the Archipelago. And this is actually a really cool map. I have played on this one before. Jankyville was created on this map, and it's pretty phenomenal. A lot of the Archipelago maps on the workshop are not tiny little islands. They're like big islands. This one is tiny little islands spread around. There's some bigger ones here too, don't get me wrong. There are some bigger ones, but like look at all these smaller ones. I mean, this map is actually pretty unique. I wasn't able to find anything on the workshop when I was trying to find an Archipelago style map to work on for a Twitch city. I was not able to actually find anything that looked this like wild and awesome and sort of like spread apart. Like each of these islands could tell its own story, you know what I mean? And that's essentially what we did in our city that we created in Jankyville. This one's super fun. It's like a classic cartoony kind of an archipelago, just completely silly and sort of a lagoon vibes, and it's really fun. You actually start. This is the block that you actually start with. And it's a really good time. This is a fun one. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching this overview for natural disasters. Definitely not my favorite DLC. There's some good maps. Like, honestly, like, you can get maps off the workshop for days, so you don't need these maps, but these are pretty good maps. You get the scenarios, which are kind of meh, and you get a very small collection of ploppable buildings that you can use for the aesthetics. If you like the idea of natural disasters, the actual disasters themselves, then yeah, this is gonna give you some of those SimCity vibes. But for someone like myself who mostly just builds cities for the aesthetics of it, it's kind of like, this is a hard pass. This is a hard pass unless you're like obsessed with the game like myself, and you will get some benefit from some of those unique buildings and those unique parks and some of those other little things. You can create some little interesting little areas and stuff with some of those special buildings. But thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.